157 from 6(7) to 11 on the roles and the powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions. A lot of these cases that have been cited and which we ended up withdrawing were made independently by myself and the teams that we work with. Of course, I do not work independently in a vacuum. I have a team of prosecutors and teams that we work with to review and prosecute the cases. Honorable Chair, those cases were necessitated to be withdrawn because, as was rightly pointed out by the Honorable Member of Gilgil, we had issues with how the evidence was passed on to the ODPP. Initially, the evidence that was tabled to us showed that we had sufficient evidence in most of those cases to prosecute. In some of the cases, the investigating officers themselves submitted affidavits to say that they produced evidence that was not complete, that some of the evidence were actually tampered with and some were even forged. This happened to myself as the DPP during this period, and a case was taken against me after having forged documents to bring a certain case against me for my removal from office. Section 157(6) envisages that the 6 and 7 envisages that the Director of Public Prosecutions can withdraw cases where there is a want of evidence or where there is an abuse of processes, and the Constitution under Section 11 actually subsection 11, 157(11) actually requires that the DPP safeguards against abuse of processes. Now, and even when the DPP withdraws a case, he does not do it solely by himself. The Constitution is also clear that the magistrate and the court plays a role to oversight and see that the evidence and the reasons that the Director of Public Prosecution has tabled before court is sufficient and can be allowed. Therefore, eventually, it is the court that decides whether the Director of Public Prosecution can withdraw that case or not. And there are certain instances where the courts have refused, and we've had to go back to the drawing board and continue prosecuting. So it is not a decision that I make solely by myself. It's a decision that involves other institutions that oversight that power that has been given to the Director of Public Prosecutions. Honorable Chair, there have been quite a number of petitions against me, over 20, and all of them have been withdrawn as we speak, all of them. And all of them were castigated or were orchestrated against me for my removal during that time, basically because I was able to say no, and I was able to be firm that the decision to charge rests with the Director of Public Prosecution and not anybody else, and that the Constitution is very clear that those powers are vested to or on the Director of Public Prosecutions. And really, if I was to succumb to the pressures and the coercion that was there, perceived or not, then I would have not been able to make independent decisions that I believe I have been able to do that, including the fact that despite the fact that those cases and the withdrawal would have brought a dent on my career, I had to make that decision because that was in furtherance of the rule of law, and I had to safeguard against miscarriage of justice. And it doesn't matter who that person is, whether it's a person of interest, whether it is a senior citizen in the country or not. And that is a decision that I made, and I do not regret making it. Honorable Chair, on the issue of whether I have, yeah, if it's unparliamentary, I can assure you that I do. And if I didn't, I think some of these cases will still be in court, and I would be involved in miscarriage of justice. I think even after having been threatened severally through 20 different cases over the last 3 years for my removal, I was firm enough to continue holding the office and making independent decisions. And I don't want to come here and lament and complain about colleagues that I've worked with. I think I would rather let bygones be bygones, but the history is there, and you can go back and see for yourself. Honorable Chair, on the issue of the Auditor General report and the underutilization of office space, this came about because of the COVID period. We had planned as ODPP to collapse some of the offices within these regions and have them centralized, because my argument was that as legal officers, if we had adequate transport, then we could be able to move out. In the process of that, we had started acquiring offices that were big enough to allow for accommodation. However, we did not manage to realize that because of the COVID period, and because of that, then when the auditors came in, they felt that this space was lost. There was no actual money that was lost. This space did not belong to me or my family or friends or cronies. These were offices that were properly acquired, and I apologize if we had lost the money, but it is a decision that we had made. But because of the COVID pandemic that came in, there were certain issues that we could not, I mean, it was beyond us. And for that, we have and will take corrective measures. I go back to the first question by Honorable Yusuf Hassan on key strategic goals and the vision that we have. Honorable Chair and members of the committee, my vision for NIS is to advance its capabilities and the capabilities of the organization to provide timely, relevant, and actionable intelligence by building a skilled and capable workforce that is adaptable, resilient, innovative, and able to address the ever-evolving threats that we face. And the question is, how will I do that? And I've come up with a strategic plan that I hope, or that I envision, if given the opportunity by you and if I'm affirmed by the committee and Parliament. And it is centered on people, systems, and processes. And I envisage refocusing the National Intelligence Service on looking at threats. The threats that we face today as Kenya transcends two different timelines. We have a part of this country that lives in the 21st century. And here technology can be leveraged upon in collecting intelligence and securing our national security interests. But we also live in a country, and part of the countries, especially in the northern part, whether it is northeastern, whether it's Turkana, Samburu, West Pokot, where we are still trapped in the early 20th and 19th century, where there is no infrastructure, where the threats are different, and where you cannot really say the areas are at par with the rest of Kenya. And because of that,